You are here today, and I'm gonna tell you how this presentation came to be. I believe it was during Hurricane Barry. Hurricane Barry was when we had record water levels on the Mississippi and Atchafalaya rivers. We were, I believe, already opening the Bonnie Carey spillway. There was talk of opening the Morganza spillway. We were getting projections from the National Weather Service that the Mississippi River was going to overflow, overtop its levees. And so it was a stressful time. And so you had parish presidents across South Louisiana, from President Hotard to I don't remember who was in Plaquemines Parish at the time of Barry. But anyway, parish presidents were calling us, what do we do? What are your models showing? Help us make a decision on evacuation, on what do our surge forecasts look like, what do flooding impacts look like. And I'll never forget this. We called together all of the parish presidents on a Zoom meeting. We had the CPRA staff, and we put up these hydrographs, these complicated graphs that allow for us to operate flood control structures across South Louisiana with, which is great. It's a great tool to have. We know when we need to operate a floodgate, when we need to open it, when we need to close it, but you can't export that tool to a decision maker like President Hotard and allow for her to make an informed decision in St. John Parish. And furthermore, she can't use that to inform risk of her residents in St. John. And so shortly after Hurricane Barry kind of fizzled out and we didn't have much impacts, I called Hugh and the folks at the Water Institute. And I was like, we have got to have more tools in the toolkit that adequately forecast surge impacts, flooding impacts, riverine flooding impacts, that we can provide to local decision makers to help inform decisions or to help them make informed decisions. But then we ought to be able to have some kind of output or tool that you are putting out in the public so that the public understands the risk that they face. When you put a hydrograph that does this with elevations, I remember Guy McGinnis and Jacqueline Hotard and some of the parish presidents going, what am I looking at? You know, tell me what I need to do. And so this is a result of that conversation. And I think that this is a very impressive presentation that he's going to go. He had the opportunity to brief the governor on it. And again, another agenda item that I think needs to be a priority for the next administration. Sorry if I stole too much of your thunder there, Hugh, but I wanted to tee it up. And I was glad that Casey Tingle was nodding his head. Yes, that did happen. So anyway, Hugh, thanks for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Klein. Thank you, members of the board. And before I dive in, actually, thank you for also giving that background, because some of the background preceded me, right? This conversation I know has been going on for even before Barry, dating back to Laura and other stories I hear from many who have had conversations around this topic. Before I dive in, I did not bring a coin.
What? A coin?
Terrible handwriting. I don't have a video.
I just need your presence here today, Hugh, so thank you.
But I do want to say a few things. The agenda's blown up, and I'm going to take the opportunity just to extend my thank you as well to you and the leadership of CPRA and the governor's office. You made a comment that CPRA is some of the best of government or state government. And in a former life before the Water Institute, I worked for governments across the country, from San Francisco to New York to Miami to Louisiana. The work that's being done here in Louisiana, the work being done by CPRA, and through the leadership of Chairman Klein, many folks I see here in the crowd, and you all, it's amazing to see the work at different levels of government and through the leadership of this group. And for that, on behalf of Team Coastal, on behalf of the Water Institute, thank you for all you do to really help advance this and bring the team together, and by demonstrating it through your leadership.
Thank you.
The FloodID system. So if anyone is aware of some of these conversations from the background, you might have heard it referred to as real-time forecasting, Louisiana flood forecasting system. We recently agreed to call it the FloodID system. Now, the conversations that led to this, again, proceeded back many years through the thought leadership of folks like Chairman Klein, Mr. Haas, and others that really have driven this forward. But the team that has advanced this concept has been widely reaching across state government, also working with our federal partners, had conversations with the Army Corps, the National Weather Service, many locals. There's been folks working in this day in and day out. Mel Gaspard from GOSEP, Casey Tingle has been very active in its advancement. You'll notice the slides are in Louisiana Watershed Initiative format. This would not have happened without not only Chip's vision and being able to move this and being dogged and making sure it happens. And we're really taking on. We're not at the pinnacle because you're willing to take on these big challenges like carbon, like forecasting, but also find the ways of folks like OCD to come to the table and also help fund this. Sometimes I say this is the best kept secret of the Watershed Initiative, right? A lot of people don't realize that it's been funding this work. There's also been a number of folks at CPRA. Ignacio Harouche early on gave a lot of insight. Day in and day out, Greg Grandy and Harry Vorhoff are supporting this. And of course, the early vision and guidance from Mr. Hawes and Chairman Klein. There's a big team working on this. There's a number of folks from the Water Institute. One person in particular, Zach Cobell. He's been the lead developer of all this. He's also been the lead of the storm surge team, developing the 2023 master plan. So the last 2 years of his life has basically been dedicated to storm surge and planning preparedness here in Louisiana. Team at LSU, the Stevens Disaster Management Institute, have been critical in advancing this. There's a group out of North Carolina who's been doing thought leadership in this space for well over a decade. There's some of the early folks leading this space, including funding some of the early work by the CPRA team, the website many of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with. There's been other really important partners, like the PSC at Carnegie Mellon, a team that we've brought to the table not only support this, but the Coastal Master Plan, and a group out of Iowa. Why Iowa, other than the nutrients coming down here? They have a statewide flood forecasting program. And so they've been very insightful in terms of how to bring this together, not only from a technology, but how to work with different stakeholders, including our federal partners. So the goals of the system, the goals that were laid forward by Mr. Haas, by Chairman Klein at the beginning, were really twofold. The two bullets on the left, or the circles on the left. First is advance our understanding of our flood hazard. So how do we better forecast the flooding, both coastal storm surge as well as what we call compound flooding, so rainfall, river flows, coastal effects all at the same time. And the second was decision support dashboards. And the task that was put before us was not just to support decisions made by CPRA, but by state government. And so certainly Casey here and being involved has been really critical, GOSEP and our partners around developing these tools. The third on the right, one of the goals that evolved over the course of this program is also to build an infrastructure that is extensible. So not only for hurricane season, not only at the coast, but year-round and potentially statewide. So everything I'm going to share with you today is built with the mindset of being extended. And that third goal is really developed through the relationship with GOSEP and the longer vision for this program. So where does it stand today? Louisiana FloodID, the lead agency moving forward, when the current research and development work under the banner of the Watershed Initiative is completed, the lead agency will become GOSEP. And so that agency, working with Casey and his team, will bring this forward. We're in the process of finalizing a plan for beta testing the system that I'll share for this hurricane season. And the idea is to work with different groups within the state or other mechanisms to fund the operations and the ongoing development year over year. So FloodID, why do we call it FloodID? So really it's two pieces. We think of it as two big components of this system. There's the flood hazard information system, so how much water, the flood depths, extents, timing. On the right side, there's decision support. So if you have a better understanding of where you might anticipate flooding, what decisions are you making? How are you driving the decisions? How are you bringing those data together with your flood predictions to make informed and timely decisions? So breaking that down a little bit farther, starting from the left, the way the system works is basically it scrapes information from meteorological providers. So we are not providing our own meteorology. We're getting that from partners like NOAA or the Navy or others who create these forecasts. So going up, scraping that in an automated fashion, both for storm surge, for tropical storms, so wind and pressure, as well as things like rainfall. We're putting it into models, so the same models that are used for the master plan for storm surge or the Louisiana Watershed Initiative for projecting rainfall or riverine effects. And then pushing all that information once we do the forecast to visualization tools. First is to be able to look at the hazard itself, and on the far right, again, the decision support tools that are layering in different information. And on the bottom, you see the back-end data workflows, and what that is representing is the automation of this system. So it can be, if the storm shifts, we can manually make changes, but the system can also run basically by itself, even during a hurricane event, so it could be fully automated. So the two components, just very, very briefly, for the sake of time, What does the FloodID system look like? This is what we call the web interface, or the front end. You'll notice that this looks very similar to some of the tools you might be familiar with today, where we're able to look at different information around the actual water elevation predictions, wave level predictions, wind speeds, looking at different properties. You'll notice that this is Hurricane Ian. The reason we're showing it for Hurricane Ian is obviously, luckily, there was not a storm to forecast last hurricane season here in Louisiana, but the system was set up in such a way we could forecast Ian. So we forecasted Hurricane Ian in partnership with the U.S. Navy. Just an example of what those forecasts look like, looking at in this case storm surge only, but looking at the storm surge projection and time series there on the Florida coast. Now, what really motivated this from a technology standpoint is leveraging sort of the pros and trying to address as many of the cons as we can from the different tools that exist out there. So there's of course federal products. I'm sure you're all very familiar with some of the products that are produced by NOAA. One of the key benefits of the federal product, that the information that NOAA produces, is it's not just running. They're not just running individual storms or the best tracks. They're running dozens and dozens of hypothetical storms, pulling that together to give you an idea of your total risk. They're publishing the 90th percent risk, which means only a 10% chance of being exceeded, but they have the information to give you an idea of what your full risk profile looks like. On the right side, the state has commissioned work and it has leading work here, already been happening for many, many years in the state to get more granularity, a better understanding of what's happening locally. The con is that there are sometimes challenges using that information if it's just a single storm. So you don't want to make certain decisions based on one potential storm track, but be able to also have that local context. So taking that into account, the idea of the FloodID system is to, again, leverage the pros of those two different concepts, try to address the cons, and really focusing on the meteorology to be able to pull in ensembles like the feds, to pull in individual storms, not only the best track, but the kind of meteorological information you'd see if you look at your iPhone, windy.com, or any other app you might use where NOAA's publishing those kind of data. The system is set up to account for compound flooding, so not only storm surge, but rainfall, stream flows. There's obviously the example that Chip gave with Hurricane Barry, or you can see by the graphic, there was also with the high river concurrent, but there's also storms like Laura and Marco, where there's two concurrent storms occurring in the Gulf, so multiple storms at one time are accounted for. And one of the key things is that there's multiple users already on this system. So the Department of Homeland Security is using this for this upcoming forecasting season for the work that they do. The National Oceanic Partnership Program, led by the Navy, is using this system, and university partners across the country. And why that is so important is that we don't have to learn all the lessons here, and we don't have to bear the burden of the cost here of its ongoing development, but there are a number of users already activated in this open source platform. So the last couple slides, the decision support tools, this is certainly what we're building towards, right? So we want the flood hazard forecast and that information, but really what it's helping with, of course, is making targeted decisions. And so through the early stakeholder engagement, working with our various partners, there's 6 dashboards that we're working to have in beta testing this year. So in the upper left, there's roadway inundation, and I'll show you a video what this looks like, but basically the intersection of our flood forecast with the roadway network. So DOTD has provided roadway elevations that we're using in this. Response infrastructure, so working with GOSEP to identify different infrastructure locations where we want to have a better idea of exposure of flooding to those locations, or potential egress challenges in those locations. Direct damages, so one thing that folks might not be aware of, it's a tremendous asset in my mind for many applications, is CPRA has put a state or a coast-wide structure inventory together. Every residential, commercial, industrial structure in the state that was put together as part of the master plan. We've been able to leverage that to estimate direct damages to buildings and contents. This is, of course, important after a storm as we think about mitigation grants. But that same structure inventory is used in the lower left in search and rescue, so we can get an idea of the number of homes potentially flooded and what level of damage to use to help prioritize search and rescue. And then the H hour and R hour, these are 2 different dashboards to help inform when operations should shut down. So the gale force winds at a statewide level, there's certain information is used now with H hour to shut down based on those gale force winds occurring anywhere in the state. This app or this dashboard breaks that down to a parish by parish level, so you have a better idea of you may have another 15-20 hours in Cameron Parish than you have in Plaquemines Parish to prepare for a storm. The R hour is the same concept, but in this case, commencing operations and returning. And I should say that I mentioned earlier our partners, This is where the LSU team from SDMI has been so critical, is working in these dashboards, particularly the search and rescue H-hour and R-hour. So the last 2 slides are here, just very, very brief videos of what some of these initial concepts look like. This is an example of an intersection for Hurricane Ida on the roadway network here on Highway 1. This, of course, has the hydrograph, but this is given in the context of where you are in space. Given an idea in the bottom, you can see that there's the different demarcations, the different color coding, and that helps inform what kind of emergency vehicles would be needed. Is it a boat? Is it a certain emergency vehicle type to have access to that area? The dashboard's also set up to give an idea of what the forecast is just moving forward versus the entire storm event, sort of the most severe flooding during it. And this is an example of, rather than a very severe event like Ida or significant flooding, what this looked like, what would have looked like in Hurricane Barry. So the last video, and this is the search and rescue dashboard, again, built, this one specifically completed or developed by our partners at LSU, developing an app or a dashboard to be able to look at the information in terms of number of homes that are flooded, broken down by different search grids used by different emergency support groups, and have the ability to open up and look at information like the structure inventory. You can see these dots on the screen. These are individual homes, and so the clustering of those is what's leading to the color coding. So the more flooding is leading to the different the red boxes, which are higher priority in terms of search and rescue. And you can see by drilling in, get the details at a parish level or at a home level, what we anticipate the level of flooding to be. So these are the kind of tools that are being developed as part of the FloodID system, again, to help move the state forward, not only CPRA and their partners, but GOSEP and the many partners that have been involved. So with that, Chairman Klein, that is the last slide.
Very impressive. Truly. Appreciate the great work on the continued updates that you and the team at the Water Institute provide us, and glad to see your light on, Mr. Tingle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for your leadership and the team at CPRA for helping us get this ball rolling. I'm happy that we have had an opportunity to transition some of the work and for GOSEP to take some leadership on this, particularly as we get to the decision support conversation, as we try to inform at the state level and our local partners with information that is helpful to them to make some of the hard decisions that have to be made in very stressful times. And so I want to thank the Water Institute and the whole team for the work that's gone into this. From a surge perspective, we've been, on the cutting edge of a lot of these things over time. And from a rainfall perspective, not just Louisiana, but nationally, there's just not been a lot of creativity around what do we do for flooding that's not caused by surge. And then in Louisiana, we don't always have the opportunity to choose which type of flood are we responding to. Most of the time, they're overlapping each other, and what was surge one day is, a river stream that's backed up another day. And from the public's perspective, or from our first responder community's perspective, regardless of where the water came from, it's there, and you have to deal with it. And it's interrupting operations, it's interrupting life, and potentially damaging property. And so I'm happy that in addition to all of the great response capabilities that we've built in our state and the ability to do that hard work, moving forward and giving them tools that allow them to better pre-position. And that's a lot of what these decision support tools are about. Where do we need to be focused on, but where do we need to be located pre-event so that the resources themselves are close enough to be helpful, but not so close that they're in danger of being impacted or something like that. And then really moving forward, helping our local partners with what kinds of areas do they need to be focused on and getting their feedback. And so look forward to how this moves forward. Happy that this was on the agenda to be able to brief, and Chip, certainly echo your remarks in terms of the path forward here. We're just scratching the surface, to be clear, on where we are today. There's a lot of work that has to happen moving forward, and continued progress along these lines, because one of the things that we're trying to really bring to the table is the ability to do this statewide, and expand some of the capabilities that have, and the the thinking behind some of those capabilities that have helped us at a coastal level, and to be able to take those to Northwest Louisiana, Northeast Louisiana, and address some of those issues too. So Hugh and the team, thank you all for your continued work on this, and Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Tingle. Mr. Bourgeois.
Yeah, this is awesome, and it's something we've been needing a very, very long time. I remember for Hurricane Isaac, as it was coming across, we had some Corps personnel looking for something to do. They were embedded with our local EOC, and what I was trying to get something in real time was just difficult. So I just asked them, give me just the height of the gauges every time the gauge reports, and so we could see where things were building. We knew our biggest threat was going to be way up in the basin, and we were able to pre-position a few resources as it came in. You don't get that opportunity every time, but the slosh models and the things like that go into this, they miss a lot of the local levees. And Ignacio, well, he was in the back of the room. Every year he's trying to make sure that all of that information is forward, but that makes the slosh model a very bad public-facing model to show, because they see, well, it says you're going to have 10 feet of water right here, and you didn't have any, and that's because you had levees in there that intercepted that water. So I want to work with you guys. You know, this is exactly something that Casey and I talked about when I had a few things to get off my chest after Ida. This ability to help with things in real time is there. So I want to offer my assistance to anything we can do on that, and Association of Levee Boards, because I think there's a lot we can bring to the table working with CPRA and getting this done. So thanks for this, and it is something, as Chip said, we need to stay on this no matter who becomes governor. This is important.
Yep, thank you.
I would
Yep, go
welcome
ahead.
that conversation as well. As Casey noted, we're in the early days still. I mean, we wanted to get to a place where the concept, we're very confident and comfortable with where it's moving, but these conversations and really understanding the need, that those are the next steps. And so I would certainly welcome those conversations and look forward to it.
One of the things that I've been most pleased with, Hugh, is your willingness to engage entities across state government that some may feel as if they don't have a particular role in responding to a storm. And so the example that I love to use is the Department of Children and Family Services, right? So they're responsible for foster children across the state. And so for you to be able to go to that department and say, what do you want to see from a statewide perspective? You know, what do you want us to be able to show on your facilities, your infrastructure? You know, go to the National Guard. You know, Casey talked about pre-positioning assets, or wildlife and fisheries and DOTD, and I just think this is going to be something that really serves the state well and allows for decision makers to make informed decisions. I would encourage you, I know you've briefed the governor on this, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to meet with local parish presidents on this, but I think that's something that I know the parish presidents would welcome. So I know Meg Bankston has the Association of Parish Presidents, and she can corral all of those members just to get their input, their feedback on some of the things that you're working on, and some of the things that they'd like to see incorporated into some of these outputs. And the same would apply. I would take Dwayne up on his offer for ALBL as well. So, all right, board is clear. Hugh, thank you for being here. Awesome work. And thanks to all the men and women of the Water